Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR with a video update on the tropics, looking at some anomalies here. Now I know everybody keeps talking, man, this is looking like an El Nino, an El Nino, an El Nino, and I have to, I beg to differ. I think we are going to see an El Nino winter 06-07. However, I saw much more evidence of that 3 or 4 months ago than I am seeing today. We do have some warm anomalies in the Pacific, but they seem to be in a larger area earlier in the year, and they've kind of cooled down. And although we do have some warm anomalies sticking out between 90 and 120 west out here in the eastern Pacific, I'm not seeing the type I'd like to see to get some Kelvin waves going, and then obviously the cooling in the Atlantic. Now we do have cooler waters off in the Atlantic, cooler anomalies, but again, the Pacific, too, is not all that warm. Neither is the South Atlantic or the Indian Ocean. In general, things are cooler, anomaly-wise, except for if you're up here in the Northwest Atlantic, and that's going to be a problem because that could impact the East Coast hurricane season with regard to a possible ridge helping push some hurricanes in. But again, we just don't know that. But yeah, I think an El Nino is coming later in the year, but as of right now, I don't see any evidence of one occurring right now. And if it is, it's very weak. There's the Gulf of Mexico, hot as ever, boiling pot. They must have a heater under there in the core of the earth boiling those waters because they are hot and they're hot deep, which means that when we have a hurricane move in later this year, it could very well reach a maximum potential intensity similar to the ones we saw last year. Notice out here, though, not as warm, and that's why if we do have hurricanes, they may not be as strong in the Atlantic as they will be in the Gulf or the Northwest Caribbean Sea. Also notice water is very warm in the Eastern Pacific out towards Hawaii, which is why our Category 4 Hurricane Daniel is maintaining itself so well. Taking a look at the Atlantic right there, things have quieted down since Beryl moved off to the northeast, made landfall in Nantucket, Massachusetts. There, though, is our next concern right here in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. This is an area of disturbed weather that right now is not too favorable, but as it moves north and northwest, it could develop into a tropical depression or storm over the next few days. As a matter of fact, here's a better look at it. And last year, if you remember, we had Brett, Gert, Jose, and then the stronger Hurricane Stan. Our four-letter storm year were for the areas of the southwest Mexican coastline here. Now, we have seen many times in the past, many times in the 40s and the 30s and the 50s, back in this active cycle we're in, hurricanes come out of here and just boom up to Cat 4 or Cat 3, major hurricanes, and then slam into the Texas or Mexican coast. We saw it in 1880, we saw it in 1886, we saw it in 1945 and 1949 and 1915. We've seen it so many times. And we saw it in 1999. Remember Hurricane Brett? Formed right here, Category 4. We can do a 3, hit Kennedy County, unpopulated. But one of these days it's going to happen again. So every time I see this, I cringe, especially knowing that typically this area is a hotbed for very hot waters and very favorable conditions. So keep an eye on this as it moves generally in this direction. Probably won't be able to strengthen too much, but I've seen some tracks straight into Mexico. The GFS, I believe, is in here. And let me show you these models actually. This is the Canadian, 60 hours. You could clearly see there's our system there. And then by 84 hours, it's moved inland in the south central Texas coastline. Also known as it has a system out here in the Atlantic. Not worried about that yet. Here's the 60-hour MM5. There's the system right there. And then once we get to 96 hours, it's moving inland in middle Texas, or Mexico rather. 60-hour no gaps. This one's a little bit more serious for the United States. There it is. This is more towards the middle of the western Gulf rather than the Bay of Campeche. And by 72 hours, 84 hours, 96 hours making landfall on the middle Texas coastline. So we'll have to keep and see what's going on with this. The NAM, you can see this is in 36 hours, 48, 60 making landfall in the middle Mexican coastline there. So, again, almost every model I see is hinting at it. Here's the GFS. This is 60 hours. There it is in the middle Mexican coast. So at this point in time, we got to keep an eye on it. You can see the wind shear right now is not all that unfavorable and is expected to become more favorable in the next few days, so that should lead to potentially some slow intensification as it moves up. But again, there's a big difference. If it moves straight into the land, we're talking maybe a 40-45 mile an hour tropical storm. If it takes more of a track towards the middle Texas coast, then we could be dealing with a stronger system if it develops. So we got to keep an eye on that. Elsewhere in the Atlantic, things are pretty quiet. You can see a very powerful tropical wave moved off the coast of Africa. Watch this, but not much with it. You can see the one that everybody was concerned about yesterday not looking too good. I wasn't too concerned about it, but it was definitely a topic of discussion because we're starting to get in that time of Cape Verde season. Wave going to move off over the next couple of days. Keep an eye on that. Hurricane Daniel, 150 miles per hour, gusting to 185, and the gusts. A lot of people ignore the gusts. The gusts of wind in a strong Category 4, 150. Are exactly what we need to know to see whether or not we had a Category 4 or 5 landfall. Charlie made landfall at this exact same intensity, but his pressure was higher. It was in an area of higher pressures. But at 941 millibars, 150 miles an hour, people were saying, wow, was Charlie a Category 5 hurricane? And they said, well, we recorded unofficial gusts 175 in Punta Gorda, 180 at Port Charlotte. Well, let's think about this. It made landfall at 150 near Port Charlotte with gusts to 180, 185. That could happen. Then it weakened to 145 by the time it got to Punta Gorda. Gusts to 175? Absolutely. So these gusts are always important. But, I mean, if you were in the middle of Daniel right now, you'd be getting unbelievable conditions. Going to weaken those. It moves to the west-northwest. Could threaten Hawaii as a area of low pressure. Look at this satellite imagery. This is Isabel, like this perfect annular hurricane. I mean, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, just so good looking there. And right in that eye, certainly looking good right now. Elsewhere, we do have Tropical Storm Amelia, 40 miles an hour, 1,004 millibars. North-northwest at 13 rather. Pressure 1,004 millibars. Expected to turn more northwest and then west-northwest and then continue northwest, paralleling the coast. But if it maintains a north-northwest heading, it could definitely become something. Forecast to be near hurricane strength, but at this point, just doesn't look good for it. There is very powerful Hurricane Daniel, annular Hurricane Daniel, large, Category 4, and there's our much weaker but large, disorganized Tropical Storm Amelia sitting right here, and Daniel right there. Continue to move off. It's always best when you have them in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's nothing around. So definitely good news there. Typhoon Kaimi, 100 mile an hour winds forecast to weaken, slam Taiwan, and then into China. And then you can see it there on satellite. Not looking all that good. Conditions becoming less favorable. I'm Mike Naso from IPR, and I'll see you next time.